Have you ever stared at your bank account showing $100,000 and wondered if you're actually rich or just really good at pretending to be? Most people think hitting six figures means they've made it, but here's the uncomfortable truth that your high school math teacher conveniently forgot to mention. That $100,000 sitting in your account isn't the finish line, it's actually the starting gun for a race you didn't even know you were running. My name is Nick, and I spend an unhealthy amount of time thinking about money, compound interest, and why most people's retirement plans seem to involve winning the lottery or hoping their kids will take care of them. If you're someone who wants to understand how your fingers and hoping for the best, money actually works instead of just crossing, make sure to hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up if it ends up saving you from eating ramen noodles in your golden years. Now, before we dive into the mathematics that will either excite you or make you question every financial decision you've ever made, let me paint you a picture of what most people think wealth building looks like. They imagine it's this perfectly straight line where every dollar saved gets them exactly $1 closer to their goal. Save 10,000, you're 10,000 closer to a million. Save 50,000, you're 50,000 closer. Simple math, right? Wrong. Dead wrong. This kind of thinking is exactly why so many people look at their modest savings accounts after years of contributions and think they'll be working until they're 85. Here's what's going to blow your mind today. I'm going to prove to you that once you hit $100,000, you're not just 10% of the way to becoming a millionaire. You're actually much closer than that. And the math behind it is so counterintuitive that most people refuse to believe it even when you show them the numbers. We're talking about a mathematical principle that has been creating millionaires for decades, yet somehow most people either don't understand it or think it's too good to be true. The secret lies in understanding something that sounds almost boring until you realize it's the most powerful wealth on the planet. We Building Force are talking about compound interest, which someone much smarter than me once called the eighth wonder of the world. Whether that person was actually Einstein or just someone on the internet pretending to be Einstein doesn't really matter. What matters is that the concept is absolutely correct. Those who understand compound interest can build serious wealth over time. Those who don't will spend their entire lives wondering why they can't seem to get ahead financially, despite doing everything their parents and teachers told them to do. Let me show you exactly how this works with some real numbers that might make you want to immediately check your investment account balance. Or if you don't have one, seriously, consider opening one. Imagine you decide to invest $500 every single month. That's $6,000 per year, which isn't pocket change, but it's also not an impossible amount for most working adults. We're talking about what many people spend on coffee, takeout, and impulse purchases without even thinking about it. Now, assuming your investments earn an average return of 8% annually, which is actually conservative compared to historical stock market performance, here's where things get interesting. It takes approximately 12 years of consistent monthly contributions to reach your first $100,000. 12 years might sound like forever when you're just starting out, but think about it this way. 12 years ago, what were you doing with your life? Time has this funny way of passing, whether you're building wealth or just letting it slip through your fingers. During those first 12 years, most of the money accumulating in your account comes directly from your own contributions. You're essentially doing the heavy lifting while compound interest is still getting warmed up. Out of that $100,000, roughly $84,000 comes from your monthly contributions, while the remaining $16,000 represents the returns your money has generated. Not bad for money that's just sitting there working for you, but admittedly, it's not going to change your life overnight. Here's where most people make a critical mistake that keeps them stuck in financial mediocrity forever. They look at those numbers and think the process is too slow. They get discouraged because the returns don't seem impressive enough. What they don't realize is that they've just completed the hardest part of the entire journey. They've built the foundation that will support everything that comes next, and that foundation is about to start working much harder for them than they ever worked for their money. Remember, we're trying to get to $1 million and you've just hit $100,000. In traditional thinking, you'd assume you're 10% of the way there, but compound interest doesn't work that way. The truth is far more encouraging and, frankly, more exciting than that. From this point forward, your money starts working exponentially harder for you. Those investment returns that seem modest during the first 12 years begin to snowball in ways that will genuinely surprise you. The next milestone is $200,000, and here's the part that will make you want to call your financial advisor or maybe fire them if they never explain this to you. It only takes about 6 more years to double that 100,000. Let me repeat that because it's important. It took 12 years to go from 0 to 100,000, but only 6 additional years to double that amount. We're now 20 years into your investment journey, and you're sitting at $200,000. The mathematics are starting to shift in your favor in a big way. At this point, compound interest is really beginning to flex its muscles. Of that $200,000, you've personally contributed roughly $120,000 through your monthly investments. The other $80,000 is pure investment growth. Your money has been quietly working in the background, earning returns on returns, and suddenly those gains are becoming substantial enough to notice. But here's the part that will absolutely blow your mind and probably make you want to immediately start investing if you haven't already. Even though you've only reached $200,000, you're actually more than halfway to becoming a millionaire. Not 20% of the way there, not a quarter of the way there, but more than halfway. This is where that original claim about being closer than you think at 100,000 starts to make perfect sense. The reason this works is that compound interest is exponential, not linear. Each dollar of growth generates its own future growth, creating this snowball effect that accelerates over time. It's like pushing a boulder up a mountain. The beginning is brutal and exhausting, but once you reach the peak and that boulder starts rolling downhill, momentum takes over in ways that seem almost magical. Now, you might be wondering what happens during the final stretch toward that $1 million goal, and this is where things get really exciting and honestly a little bit addictive. During the next 15 years, as you continue making those same monthly contributions, compound interest becomes the dominant force in your wealth building. By the time you hit the 35-year mark, you've reached that coveted 7-figure milestone. You've personally contributed approximately $210,000 over more than 3 decades, but your account balance shows over $1 million. That means more than 75% of your wealth came from compound growth rather than your own contributions. Think about what this means in practical terms. Your money is now generating roughly $80,000 per year just from investment returns. Remember how long it took you to accumulate your first $100,000? Now you're generating almost that much annually without lifting a finger. This is when people start to understand why Warren Buffett looks so relaxed in interviews. The man's money is working harder than most people do at their actual jobs. The acceleration becomes even more dramatic as you move beyond that $1 million mark. By year 40, you're looking at over $2 million, and your investments are generating more than $160,000 annually in returns alone. At this point, your money is making more money each year than most people earn at their jobs. You could literally quit working and maintain a comfortable lifestyle just from investment returns. Now, I know what some of you are thinking, Nick, this all sounds great in theory, but what about inflation? What about market crashes? What about the fact that I can barely scrape together $50 at the end of the month, let alone $500? These are fair questions, and honestly, they're the kinds of questions that separate people who build wealth from people who spend their entire lives making excuses about why wealth building won't work for them. Let's address the elephant in the room first. The 8% return I've been using in these calculations is actually adjusted for inflation. The stock market has historically returned closer to 10% annually, but we're being conservative here because nobody wants to plan their retirement based on overly optimistic projections. That's how you end up eating cat food in your golden years, and nobody wants that kind of retirement party. As for market crashes, yes, they happen. Your account balance will go down sometimes. In fact, it will probably go down quite a bit during certain periods, and you'll question every financial decision you've ever made. But Here's something interesting that most people don't realize. Market downturns actually help you if you're consistently investing over decades. When prices drop, your monthly $500 contribution buys more shares. When the market recovers, and it always has historically, those extra shares you picked up during the downturn become incredibly valuable. It's like shopping for groceries when everything goes on sale. Sure, it might feel scary to keep buying when prices are falling, but rational investors understand that temporary pain leads to long-term gain. The people who panic and sell during market downturns are essentially buying high and selling low, which is the exact opposite of what successful investors do. They're the same people who complain that investing doesn't work while simultaneously sabotaging their own financial future. But let's get back to that claim about not being able to find $500 per month. I hear this a lot, and while I understand that everyone's financial situation is different, I also think most people underestimate how much money flows through their hands without them really noticing where it goes. The average American household spends over $700 per month on food, and that includes both groceries and dining out. If you could reduce that by just 30% through meal planning, cooking at home more often, and being strategic about restaurant visits, you'd free up over $200 monthly right there. Or consider transportation costs. The average car payment in America is now over $800 per month. $800 for something that depreciates in value the moment you drive it off the lot. That's like paying rent on something that gets less valuable every single day. If you could find a reliable used vehicle and cut that payment in half, you'd have enough to fund your investment account and still have money left over for those fancy coffee drinks you refuse to give up. I'm not suggesting you should eat ramen noodles every meal or drive a car held together with duct tape and prayers, but I am suggesting that most people have more flexibility in their budgets than they realize. The problem is that we've become accustomed to certain lifestyle expectations that weren't necessarily based on sound financial reasoning. We've confused wants with needs so thoroughly that we think a $700 car payment is just a fact of life. Here's something else that makes this whole process easier than you might expect. As your investment account grows, something psychological happens that actually accelerates your wealth building. You start to notice the monthly growth in your balance, and it becomes genuinely exciting to watch. Instead of viewing investing as a sacrifice, you begin to see it as the most rewarding thing you do with your money. This excitement motivates you to look for additional ways to boost your contributions. Maybe you decide to invest your tax refund instead of spending it on something you'll forget about in 6 months. Perhaps you redirect money from lifestyle inflation when you get a raise at work. You might even start a side business specifically to generate more investment capital. When you see your money growing substantially each month without any additional effort from you, finding ways to feed that growth becomes a priority. This in mind shift set, see par who builds significant, eats those wealth from those who remain stuck in the spending cycle forever. The wealthy think differently about money and time. They understand that every dollar has the potential to become multiple dollars through compound growth, and this understanding influences every financial decision they make. That expensive dinner isn't just costing them $100 tonight. It's potentially costing them several $100s in lost investment growth over the coming decades. Now, let's talk about why reaching that $100,000 milestone is such a psychological game changer. There's something magical that happens when you see a 6-figure balance in your investment account. Suddenly, the concept of becoming a millionaire shifts from fantasy to realistic possibility. Before you hit 100,000, investment returns might generate a few $1,000s in a good year. Nice, but not exactly life-changing. Once you cross that threshold, annual returns can easily exceed $10,000. In exceptional years, you might see gains of $20,000 or more. These aren't theoretical numbers anymore. They're real money that could cover major expenses or fund significant life changes. This is when people start to understand viscerally why financial experts talk about compound interest with such reverence. But it's not just about the math, though the math is certainly compelling. It's about developing the habits, mindset, and discipline that make long-term wealth building inevitable. The person who successfully saves and invests their first 100,000 has proven they can delay gratification, stick to a plan through market volatility, and prioritize long-term goals over immediate desires. These characteristics become increasingly valuable as investment balances grow larger and the stakes become higher. There's also the opportunity factor to consider, and this is where things get really interesting from a lifestyle perspective. When you have substantial savings invested, you gain options that simply don't exist for people living paycheck to paycheck. Maybe a better job opportunity comes along, but it's with a smaller company that offers equity compensation instead of a guaranteed salary. Without financial reserves, most people can't take that risk because they need every penny from their current job to survive. With a solid investment foundation, you can afford to bet on yourself. Perhaps you've always wanted to start a business, but you needed capital to get it off the ground. Or maybe an incredible real estate opportunity presents itself, but it requires a down payment that you don't have sitting in your checking account. These scenarios happen constantly, but they're only available to people who have built up financial resources through consistent saving and investing. The beautiful irony is that the same habits that got you to 100,000 make the journey to 1 million much more achievable. You've already developed the discipline to live below your means, the patience to weather market fluctuations, and the wisdom to prioritize long-term wealth over short-term consumption. Plus, as your income naturally increases throughout your career, those monthly contributions don't have to stay at $500 forever. The person who starts investing $500 monthly at age 25 might be contributing $800 or $1,000 monthly by age 40. The early habit of consistent investing creates the foundation for accelerated wealth building later in life. It's like learning to ride a bike. Once you've mastered the basics, you can start doing more advanced tricks without falling flat on your face. But here's something most financial advisors won't tell you, probably because it doesn't sell expensive investment products or justify their 2% annual fees. The hardest part of this entire process isn't understanding compound interest or picking the right investments. The hardest part is developing the discipline to stick with the plan when everything around you is screaming for immediate gratification. We live in a culture that worships instant everything. Instant coffee, instant messaging, instant credit approval, instant streaming, instant food delivery, instant regret when you check your bank account the next morning. The idea of waiting 35 years for anything sounds absolutely barbaric to most people. They'd rather finance a luxury car today than drive a reliable used vehicle and invest the difference. They'd rather have the latest smartphone than contribute to their investment account and upgrade when their current phone actually stops working. This is why most people never build wealth, despite living in the most prosperous society in human history. It's not because they don't earn enough money, though that's the excuse they prefer to tell themselves and anyone else who will listen. It's because they've never learned to delay gratification long enough for compound interest to work its magic. They're like kids in a candy store with their allowance, except the candy store is Amazon and their allowance is their entire paycheck. The people who do build wealth aren't necessarily smarter or more disciplined than everyone else. Despite what they might tell you at dinner parties, they just have a different relationship with time and money. They understand that boring consistency beats exciting speculation almost every single time, while others are chasing the latest cryptocurrency or trying to time the market like there's some kind of financial profit. Successful investors are quietly adding to their index funds month after month, year after year. And let's be brutally honest about something else that might sting a little. The math I've shown you assumes you never increase your contributions, never receive any employer matching in a retirement account, and never make any additional lump sum investments. In reality, most people's wealth building accelerates significantly beyond these conservative projections, assuming they don't sabotage themselves with poor decisions. Like, your employer might match 50 cents for every dollar you contribute to your company retirement plan. That's an instant 50% return before your money even gets invested, which is better than most people's annual investment returns. You might receive tax refunds, bonuses, or inheritance money that gets added to your investment accounts. You could start a side business that generates additional income specifically earmarked for wealth building. So there you have it. Your $100,000 isn't just sitting there looking pretty in your account. It's actually the financial equivalent of being pregnant with twins when you thought you were just getting a little chunky. The math doesn't lie, even when it seems too good to be true. Time and compound interest are working in your favor, but only if you stop making excuses and actually give them the chance to do their job.